They say love is supposed to bring families together. For me, it tore mine apart. I'm Ava Thompson, and if you had asked me 5 years ago where I'd be today, I never would have guessed I'd be estranged from my entire family, building a life from ashes, yet somehow stronger than I've ever been. It all began on a warm Sunday afternoon in Atlanta. I still remember the scent of jasmine floating through the backyard air as I nervously brought Elijah home to meet my family for the first time. My palms were sweating, and my stomach fluttered with the hope that my parents would see what I saw in him. Elijah was calm, composed, and, God, he was beautiful. Not just outside, but in the way he spoke with intention, in the way he held doors open without thinking twice, and the way he treated me like I mattered. Not like a possession, not like a project, but like a partner. My mother, Mary Ann, greeted us with a stiff smile. My father, Charles, barely stood from his recliner. I thought it was awkward tension, maybe a rough day. But there was something in their eyes, not just surprise. Something colder. Dinner was unbearable. Elijah, trying to charm them, asked about my childhood, and my mother redirected the conversation to politics. My father never looked him in the eye. When Elijah complimented my mom's casserole, she said, "That recipe's from Ava's grandmother, who'd be rolling in her grave right now." She smiled like it was a joke. I forced a laugh. Elijah tried too. But I felt my cheeks burning. After we left, Elijah took my hand. "They'll come around," he said. I nodded, but a chill had already settled in my chest. Weeks passed, then months. I'd call home, and they'd say they were busy. I tried inviting them to dinner. They declined. Holidays came, and I found myself sitting at Elijah's table, surrounded by his warm, vibrant family, while mine sent a single text, "Hope you're well." But I kept telling myself it was temporary, that they'd wake up one day and see what I saw. Then came the day I told them we were engaged. I called my mom first, excitement trembling in my voice. She was quiet, too quiet. Then she said, "I need to call your father." Click. 3 hours later, I got an email. Not a call, not a visit, an email. "Ava, we can't pretend to support something we don't believe in. You're making a choice, and so are we. Do not come to the house. We will not attend your wedding. Please respect our decision. Mom and Dad." I read that message 27 times. Each time, it felt like another punch to the gut. My hands trembled. My throat closed. Elijah found me on the kitchen floor, phone in one hand, wine glass in the other, tears streaking my face. "I'm sorry," I whispered, over and over. "For what?" he asked, kneeling beside me. "For dragging you into this. For loving you." His eyes narrowed with pain. "Don't ever apologize for that. Ever." We got married anyway, under a canopy of oak trees, surrounded by friends and Elijah's family. I walked down the aisle in a dress my mom never saw, holding flowers she never helped pick. I scanned the crowd. Empty chairs. Their absence screamed louder than any rejection. But I told myself again it's their loss. I was choosing love, not hate. We moved into a small home in Decatur, started building a life together. He got promoted to lead developer at a tech firm. I opened a wellness studio with a few friends, yoga, meditation, sound healing. Slowly, I began to heal. And yet there were nights I'd scroll through my camera roll, landing on old family photos. My brother Tyler's graduation. Dad holding me after my first ballet recital. Christmas mornings with matching pajamas. Those memories would pierce through like shards of glass. Sometimes I'd dream about them showing up at my door. Sometimes I'd dream about screaming at them. Other times, I just cried in my sleep. Then, nearly 3 years later, it happened. It was a Thursday. Rain tapped against the window, rhythmic and persistent. I was rearranging crystal displays in my studio when my assistant, Lila, called out, "Hey, Ava, there's someone here asking for you." I walked to the lobby. My heart nearly stopped. There stood my mother. Her hair was shorter. Her eyes older. She wore a thick coat, though it wasn't cold. And her lips trembled when she spoke. "Ava, we need your help." My legs went weak. My throat dried. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. It's your father, she whispered. He's sick. We don't know what else to do. She looked at me like we hadn't lost 3 years. Like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't ripped my heart out in an email. I stared at her. My breath caught between disbelief and rage. The door chimed as someone else stepped in. Tyler. My brother. The only one who had texted me a congrats after I got married, then ghosted me too. He looked thinner. Tired. Ava, please, he said. Can we just talk? A storm swirled inside me. My chest ached with questions. But I managed only 3 words. Why now, Mom? I didn't answer them right away. Instead, I walked back behind the counter of my studio, forcing my breath to steady. I could feel their eyes on me, waiting for something, anger, forgiveness, anything. But all I had was numbness. Lila, sensing the tension, quietly slipped out. The studio was suddenly too quiet, too exposed. Tyler spoke first. We wouldn't be here if it weren't serious. Dad's in the hospital. He had a stroke 2 weeks ago. It affected his speech and mobility. He's not doing well. I looked up slowly. And now you need me. Why? What do you expect me to do? Wave a magic wand and erase everything? Mom's hands tightened around the strap of her purse. Ava, please. We didn't come to fight. We came because we need you. That's rich. I laughed bitterly. You disowned me over love. Now you come crawling back over illness. It's not like that, she snapped, before catching herself. You have power of attorney from his previous paperwork. Financial access. Medical decisions. He never changed it. That stopped me. What? I asked, narrowing my eyes. Tyler nodded. He kept you on everything, even after the fallout. So, I'm supposed to believe the man who said I was no longer his daughter never got around to removing me from his legal documents. It wasn't that simple, Mom said quietly. He was angry, but I think deep down he couldn't bring himself to let go of you completely. I crossed my arms, my pulse rising. It was all too convenient, too sudden. A man who hadn't spoken to me in years was now relying on me for life decisions? You still haven't told me what you want, I said. Is this just about his care, or is there something else? They exchanged a look. That look. The one people give each other when they're hiding something. My stomach dropped. There's an issue with the house, Tyler admitted. Dad put your name on the deed before the fallout. He never reversed it. Now the hospital bills are piling up, and the only asset big enough to liquidate is the house, I finished. You want me to sell the house to cover the bills? Silence. I felt something snap inside me. Not anger. Not even sadness. It was betrayal layered over with convenience. I was useful again. That's all it was. Still, a voice inside whispered, what if he really is dying? What if you'll never get another chance? I agreed to visit the hospital, but made no promises. Not about the house. Not about anything. That night, Elijah held me as I told him everything. He didn't say, I told you so. He didn't have to. You don't owe them anything, Ava, he whispered, rubbing circles on my back. But if going gives you closure, then go. For you, not for them. I nodded, but my mind was miles away. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and something else, sour and old. Room 317. I walked in slowly. Dad looked smaller, paler. His face slack on one side. One eye barely opened. Machines beeped quietly around him. Mom sat beside the bed, gently dabbing his lips with a sponge. She looked up at me, her eyes red. Charles, she whispered. Ava's here. His eye fluttered. He tried to speak, but only a strained moan escaped. I couldn't read his expression. Shock, regret, pain? I stood there, unsure of what to feel. Mom reached for my hand. I pulled it away without thinking. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something didn't feel right. It wasn't just the timing. It was their desperation. The way they had glossed over 3 years of silence, like it was nothing. The way they kept glancing at each other in the studio. The fact that I still had legal authority over things they didn't want me to touch. And that strange line from Tyler. He never changed it. Did they want me to believe that Dad simply forgot to cut me out of his estate planning? Or did he try and someone stopped it? I started digging. The next day, I logged into the online access to my father's trust account, something I hadn't touched since before the wedding. I still had the credentials. And surprisingly, they still worked. There had been recent changes. Too recent. A withdrawal of $75,000 had been made 6 months ago from the trust, labeled medical advancement. But Dad hadn't been hospitalized until 2 weeks ago. I checked again. It wasn't a hospital charge. It was transferred to a third-party consulting firm, a firm registered under a shell LLC in my brother's name. My heart froze. Tyler. I copied the documents, screenshots, transaction logs. My breath was shallow as realization crept in. The hospital story might be true, but the financial crisis? Manufactured. They didn't need me just to help. They needed me to clean up a mess. Elijah leaned over my shoulder. They're hiding something bigger, he said. I think they embezzled from the trust, I whispered. And now they need my signature to release the house for sale. They think you'll just hand it over? They think I'm still the girl who needed their approval. I sat in the dark for hours, memories flooding in. Dad teaching me to ride a bike. Mom braiding my hair. Tyler sneaking me cookies when I was grounded.
It was all a lie.
Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe love can exist next to betrayal, quietly, shamefully. But I knew one thing. They weren't telling me everything. The next day, I asked Tyler to meet me alone. I didn't tell him what I'd found. I just wanted to see his face. We met at a coffee shop. Neutral ground. He hugged me awkwardly. I'm glad you came. I've been thinking, I said carefully, about the house.
The trust.
The hospital bills. He stiffened slightly. Yeah, I still have control over everything, I said, sipping my coffee. It's strange, isn't it? After all this time. He hesitated. Dad, he was always stubborn. Probably figured he'd change it later. Or maybe someone convinced him not to. He blinked. What are you getting at? I leaned forward. Tell me the truth, Tyler. Why are you really here? A long pause. Then his jaw clenched. Look, things got messy. There were some investments that didn't work out. I borrowed from the trust with the plan to return it. Then Dad had the stroke, and everything spiraled. So you used my father's money. You gambled with it. Then came running to me when the consequences hit. He looked away. You don't understand what it's like carrying this family. You're right, I said coldly. I only know what it's like to be discarded by them. He stood up. This isn't just about you, Ava.
He's dying.
Are you really going to let him go without saying goodbye? I stared at him, heart pounding. Don't use guilt to clean your mess. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. What if Dad had tried to protect me all along? What if he left me those powers for a reason because he didn't trust Tyler? I needed answers. Real answers. And there was one person who might still have them.
Dad.
Even if he couldn't speak, he could still blink. I returned to the hospital early the next morning. There was a heaviness in the air, like the sky outside was pressing down on the building. I made my way through the quiet hallways until I reached room 317. My mother wasn't there this time. Just my father, the machines, and the quiet beep of life stretched thin. I closed the door behind me. Dad, I whispered, stepping closer to the bed. His eye twitched, slowly blinking open. Can you hear me? He blinked once. Then again. Deliberate. I pulled the chair close and sat beside him. I need you to listen very carefully. I'm going to ask you questions. Blink once for yes, twice for no. Okay. One blink. I steadied my breath. Did you know Tyler used the trust fund before your stroke? One blink. I felt a jolt run through me. Did he do it without your permission? One blink. My stomach turned. Did he try to stop you from removing me from the documents? Another single blink. I leaned forward, my voice trembling now. Did you leave me in charge because you knew I wouldn't lie to cover for them? His eyelid fluttered. One long, slow blink. That was all I needed. I reached out, brushing a strand of gray hair from his forehead. Thank you, I whispered. There was a knock at the door. The nurse stepped in, surprised to see me. You're Ava? I nodded. There's something you should see. She handed me a folder. He had this updated living directive stored here at the hospital. It was faxed in last week. I opened it. The directive had been notarized from an assisted care lawyer, a full amendment. It reconfirmed me as medical proxy, dated after his stroke. That was impossible, unless he'd already been planning to fix things before the stroke hit. My father hadn't just forgotten to remove me. He'd made sure I was protected against them. My chest tightened. Rage burned through my veins. They used me, shunned me, and now they wanted my signature on the house, on his care decisions, like I was a pawn in a game they never thought I'd win. I tucked the document into my bag. I went home and printed every piece of evidence. Trust withdrawals. LLC links to Tyler. Scans of the directive. My fingers moved fast. My mind faster. They thought I was the same woman who once begged for their approval. They were about to meet someone else. I called a meeting. Saturday morning. My house. No Elijah this time. This wasn't his burden. Mom and Tyler showed up right on time, dressed like they were going to Sunday service. Fake peace in their eyes. We sat at the dining table. The same one Elijah and I had eaten takeout on our first night here. I slid a folder across to Tyler. What's this? He asked. Proof, I said, that you've been draining the trust. Using Dad's name. Routing money through shell firms. He didn't touch the folder. I also spoke to the hospital. Dad's latest directive names me as sole medical and financial decision-maker. You knew that, didn't you? My mother looked like she'd aged 5 years in 5 seconds. Tyler's jaw tightened. This isn't what you think. Oh, I think it is. I think you wanted to pressure me into selling the house so you could wipe out the evidence before anyone else caught on. My mother finally spoke. Ava, please. He was just trying to protect the family. No, I said. He was protecting himself. You don't understand, Tyler said sharply. Dad trusted me with the finances. Things went sideways. I panicked. You lied, I snapped. You disowned me and then lied. And now you want forgiveness because you're scared. They didn't answer. I stood up. You wanted help? Here's what I'll do. I'll cover Dad's care. I'll make sure he has the best support money can buy. But you, I looked Tyler dead in the eye, will sign a legal statement admitting misuse of trust funds. And you'll return every cent you have left. You can't. I can. I cut in. And I will. Because I'm not the black sheep anymore. I'm the shepherd now. And I won't let you burn down what's left of this family. He looked at Mom, searching for backup. She stayed silent. I'll get the paperwork, he muttered. Later that night, I went back to the hospital. My father's eye opened when I walked in. I took his hand. I know, I said softly. Everything. A tear slipped down his cheek. I'm not doing this for them. I'm doing it for you. Because deep down, I think you try to make it right. He blinked once. And in that blink, I finally found closure. Back at home, I stood in front of the mirror, staring at the woman I'd become. The woman they once disowned. The woman they now feared. My phone buzzed. A text from Tyler. Paperwork signed. I'm sorry, Ava. Truly. I deleted it without responding. But in my heart, a strange peace settled. Not forgiveness. Just freedom. Sunday afternoon, I received a call from my mother. I let it ring the first time. And the second. On the third, I answered, not because I wanted to hear her voice, but because I wanted her to hear mine. Ava, she began, her voice brittle. I need to talk to you face to face. You had 3 years to talk to me, I replied flatly. Why now? Because I didn't know the whole truth. I didn't know what Tyler had done, she said quickly. He told me he had it under control, that your father was rewriting the trust, that you were long gone, and it didn't matter. I stayed silent. Ava, she continued, her voice cracking, I was wrong. About everything. About Elijah. About you. There was a pause. Then, please. Just one visit. I won't ask for anything else. I agreed to meet. Not for her, but because the confrontation we'd avoided for years had to happen. She came to my house that evening, eyes hollow, her posture smaller than I remembered. She sat across from me in the living room like a guest in a stranger's home. I came here today, she began, not to ask for help, but to ask for forgiveness. I waited. Let her speak. When you told me you were marrying Elijah, I panicked. It wasn't about him, not really. It was about control. About the image of our family. About fear. Fear of what? I asked, folding my arms. That people would judge us. That I'd lose face with our church, our neighbors. That your father's reputation would suffer. Funny, I said, because I was the one who lost everything. She looked up, tears forming in her eyes. I failed you, and I've lived with that guilt every single day. I stood, emotions boiling. You didn't just fail me, Mom. You chose pride over your own daughter. You picked appearances over love. And when I was at my lowest, when your silence hurt more than any insult, you didn't come. Tears rolled down her face now. I thought if I pretended it didn't happen, it would go away. That if I stayed silent long enough, I wouldn't have to face how wrong I was. You watched Tyler use Dad, and you said nothing. I was scared, she whispered. He threatened to cut me off too. Said I'd lose the house, everything. You let him twist the knife while pretending your hands were clean. Silence. Then she looked up, trembling. You were always stronger than me, Ava. I didn't know how to fight for you, but I'm trying now. I know it's too late, but I'm trying. I sat back down slowly. My voice was quieter, but firmer. You want forgiveness. But you have to understand, this isn't just about words. It's about rebuilding something that you burned down. She nodded. I'll help Dad. Not for you. Not for Tyler. For the man who, even in silence, left me the power to protect what mattered. I understand. But when he's gone, and this is over, we don't go back to normal. There is no normal anymore. Her eyes widened slightly. Then what do? We start over, I said. But on my terms. And only if I believe you've earned it. She nodded again, barely breathing. Then she stood, walked to the door, and turned to me one last time. You may not believe this, but I'm proud of you, Ava. I didn't respond. She left. And for the first time, the silence felt like power. The following week moved like molasses. Time dragged, weighted by paperwork, hospital updates, and the uneasy silence between past and present. I coordinated my father's care, hired a private nurse, and signed off on all medical decisions. Each time I initialed a page, I thought about the girl I used to be, starving for approval, bending backward for love that had always been conditional. That girl was gone. I buried her the day I chose myself. But a different part of me, the daughter, was grieving in quiet. I visited Dad every morning, watching his chest rise and fall, his fingers twitching. His eyes still blinked when I spoke. We had a new language now, one of silence, of presence, of intention. One day I read aloud from his favorite Steinbeck novel. I'd barely reached page 20 when I noticed his eye begin to water. A tear slipped down, curling along the wrinkle of his cheek. I stopped reading. Was I a disappointment? I whispered. A long pause. One blink. I smiled bitterly. That's honest. Another blink. Then a third. I hesitated. 3 blinks. I waited. Another set of 3. Then 2. He was trying to say something. 3.
2. 1.
Repeated again. My eyes widened. Countdown, I murmured. You're telling me to look? I opened the drawer beside the hospital bed, rummaging until I found a small leather-bound notebook tucked between his medication logs. Inside were scribbled pages, barely legible, dates, thoughts, fragmented sentences. But one line stood out, written clearly across an entire page. If they find this before Ava does, everything is gone. My breath caught. I flipped to the back. Folded inside was a photocopy of a handwritten will, one I hadn't seen before. dated just weeks before his stroke. My name was underlined, and beside it a note. She is the only one I trust. Not because she's perfect, but because she forgave what I never could. I pressed the notebook to my chest, a tidal wave of pain crashing through me. That night, I dreamed of my childhood home, burning slowly, quietly, the walls collapsing inward while I stood outside with a match in my hand, crying. When I woke up, Elijah was already in the kitchen, making tea. He glanced up. Another nightmare? I nodded. You okay? No, I said honestly, but I'm getting there.
He brought the tea to me.
Whatever it is you're carrying, let me carry some. I handed him the notebook. He read through the pages, his face tightening. He knew. He knew everything. About Tyler. About the manipulation. About how they treated me. Elijah looked at me. And still chose you. I nodded. A week later, Dad passed away in his sleep. No last words. No dramatic gasps. Just silence. The funeral was small, respectable, polite. I stood beside Elijah as people murmured condolences. Tyler gave a speech that felt rehearsed, hollow. My mother cried with her face buried in a silk handkerchief, never once looking my way. I didn't speak, but I watched, observed, felt every fracture in the air. After the service, I requested a formal meeting with the estate attorney. Tyler and my mother were already seated when I arrived. The room smelled like leather and tension. The attorney, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, cleared her throat and began reading the will. The version they expected was not the one she read. The revised will gave me full control of the estate, the house, the residual trust, even my father's personal belongings. Tyler's jaw dropped. My mother's lips parted, but no words came. There must be a mistake, Tyler stammered. That's not the version we have. That's correct, the attorney replied coolly. This version was updated and legally filed 4 weeks before your father's stroke. With Ava present as his medical proxy, it remains valid. My mother finally spoke. He never told us. He didn't need to, I said, voice steady. He knew you wouldn't understand. They both looked at me then, not with grief, but with something closer to fear. And for the first time, I understood what real power looked like. I moved through the next few days with surgical precision, transferred the house into a new trust, liquidated the non-essential assets, donated a portion of the funds in my father's name to a scholarship fund for underprivileged youth in Atlanta, specifically for students pursuing ethics in law and finance. The irony was not lost on me. When I informed Tyler of the donation, he exploded. You're throwing our legacy away. No, I said calmly. I'm reclaiming it. You're just doing this to punish us. Maybe I am, I replied. Or maybe I'm doing what Dad wanted, but never had the courage to do himself. He stormed out. Mom didn't say a word, just stared at the old family photo on my hallway shelf. She touched it gently, like a relic. I don't know who we are anymore, she whispered. I shrugged. Neither do I. But I like who I've become. She left without another word. Weeks passed. Life slowly returned to rhythm. My studio flourished. Elijah and I began house hunting outside the city, talking about starting a family. One evening, I returned home to find an envelope taped to my door. No return address. Inside was a single photo. It was of my father, in his hospital bed, eyes closed, peaceful. And beside him, unmistakable, was Tyler, slipping something from the drawer. The date stamp was 2 days before I found the notebook. I flipped the photo over, written in my father's handwriting. He almost took it, but I waited until he left. You always were the stronger one. My hands trembled. I looked up, half expecting someone to be standing in the shadows. No one. But I knew what the message meant. Dad knew Tyler had been watching. Planning. He waited until it was safe to leave the truth behind.
For me.
And whoever captured that moment, whoever left the photo, was still out there, watching. That night, as I sat by the fireplace, notebook in one hand and photo in the other, Elijah leaned over. You okay? He asked. I nodded slowly.
Yeah.
I think I finally am. And then I whispered something I hadn't said in a long, long time. I forgive him. Elijah took my hand. And I looked into the flames. No, I said. But I forgive myself. That's enough. Just as I turned away, I caught something in the window. A flicker. A shadow. A reflection of someone watching from across the street. And then it was gone. But deep in my bones, I knew. This story wasn't really over.
Not yet.